What up, No? We're back. January 4th edition of whatever we call this, the Tom Close Iowa Sports Review weekly show. I just made that up on the spot. Anyways, my name's Tom Close. I write for Go Iowa Awesome, and I do the show every Tuesday. Hit subscribe on YouTube right below the video. Should be a little button to your left, to your right. I'm not entirely positive, but hit subscribe and please get involved. Join the chat. This is centered around the viewer and around Hawkeye fans, and just as a new avenue to work out our issues or celebrate the great moments. Up there in the, I got it right this time, top right corner or top left corner on my screen on Facebook. Pretty big game basketball wise. We will get to that later. It wasn't the prettiest win, but it really was a very important win for obvious reasons and maybe not so obvious reasons. So we'll get to that a little bit. I wanted to put a bow on the football season. Adam Jacobi and he'll be on tomorrow night at this time, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. But we jumped on in the post game of the Citrus Bowl and broke that down. And I just wanted to touch on some of those points because it was a very interesting conversation. We were on for almost 2 hours. And just off the bat, what can you say? It was, you can't against quality opponents. It reminded me a lot of the, and it reminded me a lot of games this season because the offense wasn't great, but the Colorado State game comes to mind only in that Iowa took a half off and found a way to win. But it was Colorado State. You're not going to do that against good competition. And they almost pulled it off. It was almost a very Kirk Ferentz. I mean, when they were leading late, it was sort of, how are they winning this game? If you had watched the first half, you would never think they'd be in this game. But they came back. And so look, it's tough to fault the defense. The entire question of the game is going to come down to, I've seen various articles about it. Should Kirk have gone for it on 4th and inches and gotten the first down instead of punting back to Kentucky with 3 minutes left? And I didn't have a problem with it. I'm in the minority, I think. Everyone's and their mother is saying he should have gone for it. I just think, look, it's a 10-win team. Playing Ferentz ball has gotten you here. Playing Ferentz ball got you to the Big Ten title game. Won the West. Just play Ferentz ball again. And, this is the same team that was taking knees at the 50-yard line and just punting up. I think it was 3 on Penn State late in that game. Taking knees inside the 5 and kicking a field goal to go up 5 against Minnesota late in the game, just trusting the defense. And they tried it, and it was one too many times the well, but I didn't have a problem with it. The offense had shown they were running the ball well, but it became so telegraphed at the end. I don't think they were going to get a yard. I trusted the defense to hold Kentucky out of the end zone. If Iowa was up a field goal or less, then yeah, it's a horrible call. But they're up 4 late in that game, so I didn't mind it. The defense gives up the touchdown. Iowa, I thought, was going to come back and win the game, or at least tie it. Iowa, they put together a pretty good drive. And then Petrus just threw a pick. But all in all, very fun game in that second half. The first half was pretty ugly for Iowa. But again, the defense held them in it with some short fields. And God, you watch that second half and you just watch with a run game, a competent run game, and a couple of Iowa, quote unquote, Iowa running backs. The Williamses, Gavin and LaShawn, is it LaShawn Williams? I forget his name now. Gavin and LaShawn Williams. Yep. It looks like an Iowa running attack. And that's an interesting question when it comes to the Tyler Goodson equation. Was he holding them back? And I think in ways this running game, he was holding them back, not to his fault, though. I think it was a coaching failure on the Tyler Goodson end. You would see flashes. The touchdown against Maryland really came to mind when he he did that zigzag out of the backfield, and they started using him in the passing game, and it would pay off and getting him to space. But the first touchdown of the year, it might have been his first carry of the year. The run around the end against Indiana had to be their longest run of the year. But they just didn't use him right. He's not the prototypical, up and down between the tackles guy. He's not going to run people over for the most part. He doesn't crave contact. He runs away from it, which is what he should be doing, because he's that good and that fast. And he still ran for 1,000 yards, but just misused. I think that's the bottom line. And it was. I think it was good all around that Tyler Goodson didn't play in the bowl game. Good for him, because why risk the injury for, it is just the Citrus Bowl, and just go right into the NFL stuff. And it was good for Iowa that we got to see the Williamses, and both of them looks like the running game is going to be pretty good with the two of them. Now the offensive line has to come around. The offensive line I thought was outstanding, really all day. Didn't allow a sack. Gavin had 98. LaShawn had 42. Iowa ran for 173 total. There was a lot to like out of this game. And you look at the box score. I mean, Iowa outgains them 384 to 350. Outgains them 384 to 354. Outrushes them 173 to 121. But they lose the turnover battle. Time of possession wasn't even close. Kentucky had it for 15 more minutes. And it's funny. It's like the opposite. You see these box scores sometimes, and you go, "How did Iowa win the game?" And you look at this one, and you wonder, I don't know how Iowa really lost this game, but they took a half off. I mean, Kentucky put pretty much all of their numbers up in the first half, and Iowa put all theirs up in the second half, and it was just too little, too late. Dug themselves too big a hole, and couldn't put the game away. And because of that, Kentucky wins. When Iowa loses bowl games outside of losing by 50 in Pasadena, or if they ever got to a playoff and lost a playoff, I don't, a lot of people put a lot of stock into bowl games. I've always kind of looked at them as the beginning of next year, depending on what bowl it is. If it's the Rose Bowl, it's not the beginning of next year. It's a payoff. But this was one of those games where I think what you wanted to see was, did Iowa have anything, especially at the quarterback position? And it's still the big question. We don't know. And I question, I question whether Padilla is going to be here maybe after the spring if there's an open competition. I question if next year's starting quarterback week 1 is even on the roster, which I don't think Iowa's going to jump in the transfer portal or anything. They've kind of mentioned it, but it just doesn't seem like that's a thing. Joey Labus, the true freshman who hasn't even taken a snap, not that I can recall, seems to be the name du jour right now, and maybe he's the real deal. People are excited. I got to look up his tape. I've never really watched him before. So, I mean, that's the big question. It's the $1 million question. It's the most obvious question. It was the question we had really going into this game, and probably since the Purdue debacle. It's just been an ongoing question. Alex Padilla, I think, is gone. And I mean, he ended up throwing 3 picks, missed open receivers, missed Reganey on a wide open touchdown, the play that beat Penn State. He was not great. And so, I mean, at the very least, look, the good and the bad news. I mean, the good news for Spencer Petras is, and I can say this with full confidence, I don't trust anyone else in this roster right now. I mean, he's won games and everything. So I do think there needs to be a quarterback competition. I don't think there's anyone it's just like their job. Like, there's some people that are just like, give the job to Padilla. Like, I can't say that. He they had to take him out, and Petras came in and they won the Nebraska game after that. So I think the most important thing is there has to be an open competition. And, I don't want to knock Spencer Petras, and especially on social media, there was the whole interview with Petras. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up, just about negative comments and how it gets back to his family, and it's 100% fair, and people shouldn't be very personal, and this is how this gets, unfortunately, that people are kind of monsters about it. But I think if Petrus is starting next year outside of somebody getting hurt in fall practice or spring practice and he's just there by attrition, then I'm not sure, unless, is he really going to make that big a jump at this point? Like, he already graduated as a junior, I think. So I question where this program's really going, because it's clear, and there's a lot to love about the season and about the future. Recruiting is up exponentially in the last few years. They've won more than ever now in the last few years. Ferentz has this like sustained success going. They won the West outright. I mean, there's a lot to like. 10 wins doesn't come around. But is this it, though? And I think the quarterback position is making it so right now. And so they have to figure something out, whether it's a transfer, whether it's, look, maybe the easy call is Joey Labus is just really good and he's going to be the starter, and that's it. But, average quarterback play probably wins them another game, and they're in a New Year's Six Bowl, and then win the West probably by 2. I would say if any of the games, I thought the Wisconsin game became winnable in that second half. The Purdue game, they couldn't really stop them, but again, Iowa couldn't score, so that's part of the reason. I mean, they did only give up 24 at the end of the day against David Bell. It wasn't like he was putting up 50. So I think that's the disappointment of this year, and it's the most important position in all of sports, and Iowa just doesn't have it right now. They don't have it solved, and they have to figure out a way to solve it. And whatever that is, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. And I'm not sure it's on the roster. That's kind of the scary thing, but maybe it is. But I would expect, and we'll have more on this. I mean, we have a whole offseason to talk about it, but spring practice, it feels like one of the P's is transferring. It feels like it'll be Alex Padilla. I don't know why he would maybe stick around at this point. I mean, I think he showed flashes that he could play a little bit. He could play for a MAC team. He could go to maybe, I don't know, like an Illinois and challenge for the job or something. I don't know. I don't know the situation at quarterback at some of these teams, but I do like a lot of what Padilla was doing. But it feels like one of those two will be gone. I mean, I was bringing in a quarterback every cycle now. So that's the grand question moving forward. As for the bowl game, they lost to a good team. It is what it is. I thought that they acquitted themselves well in that second half. It's a shame that first half, the offense just did nothing. The defense was phenomenal till the end. I'll never blame them for, I mean, there were moments where I thought early in that Penn State game, the defense just didn't have a clue. Early in the Wisconsin game, that first half of the Wisconsin game was probably their low point of the year. Even the Michigan game, Michigan was executing, and that offensive line was the best offensive line in college football. And they held them to 14 at half. I mean, when Iowa was punting the ball 3 and out every time and turning the ball over inside the 30, I'm not going to blame them much. So the defense was great until the end, and it'll still be, if you look at the recruiting class, it's only going to get better, which is scary. But Iowa, it's pretty clear that, and I think this is just clear across college football, including the Alabamas and the Georgia. I mean, Georgia is probably the perfect example. If they don't win this national championship, you can only win so much. Georgia has all the 5 stars. They can match Alabama with the recruiting rankings, but Alabama has that offense. Georgia does not. And, maybe they can win it Monday, but it feels like you can only win so much with the defense in college football. At some point, because the game is tailored around it, you have to have at least a competent offense, and Iowa didn't this year. And in the games when their offense was doing anything, they were blowing out teams. See Maryland. I mean, in tandem with Iowa, picking off 6 passes or 7 passes in that game. The Iowa State game early on. Yeah, Iowa's defense scored a touchdown. They're phenomenal. But Iowa's offense scored. They did. They put up some points in that game. I think they scored 14 early in that game. And then the defense took over. But the defense has been so good, and I think it'll continue to be so good. If Iowa can just field a competent offense, an average offense, I think they're much better than most of these teams in the Big Ten. I think we're at a point now, talent-wise too, where outside of going to Ohio State, which they do next year, I don't think there's a game in the Big Ten where you're like, they have no chance. In the shoe, I guess they have a chance, but it's probably about 5% at best. But other than that, they could beat any of these teams. They could probably lose to most of them because of their offense. So they have to clean up the quarterback position. They just have to. It has to get better. It has to get it has to get a lot better. And it's been so bad that it has to get a lot better to get to normal or just average or maybe even just below average. It was worse than below average. I do think the running back situation post Tyler Goodson is going to be better for what Iowa wants to do. It felt like with Goodson, and this is back to misusing him, a lot of square peg, round hole. They couldn't, they tried to do some things. They tried to make him, Sean Green, and he just wasn't. And that wasn't his game. He wouldn't hit the hole because he's not going to run through guys. He chops his feet too much. He dances around. Well, that's his game. That's why you got to get him in space. Run some sweeps. They did it with Akram Wadley. That was Greg Davis, by the way, not Brian Ferentz. I don't understand why it didn't gain that much traction with Tyler Goodson. But he's off to the NFL, I believe. We wish him well, and a lot to like, though. Very exciting to see that running game and that offensive line. You're about to lose Tyler Linderbaum, but offensive line really taking shape. I thought, the Michigan game aside, because good God, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo just destroyed Iowa in that game, that pass rush. But the Michigan game aside, I thought their offensive line was really coming on late in the year. It felt like it. The last couple of games, they were getting a push, especially late in games. And so there is a lot to like. And this program, it feels like the trajectory of this program is up, pending what happens under center. And I think, if it's what we saw this year, I think you're just limited to 10 wins. And, with this tougher schedule, you're probably at 9 and you're not going to Indy. And this program should be in Indy routinely. This should not be the bar, but it is the bar right now because they haven't gone to Indianapolis a lot. So they just need to keep winning the West more often than not. Some promising recruits coming in quarterback wise. Everyone's like, oh, this guy Marco, he's a dual threat from New Jersey. It's like class of 2023 or something. Like, I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do with that? Ohio State offers, he's gone. He could have a change of heart. I don't know. If Joey Levis is the next Connor Cook, is he gonna come here? And that that's too far in the future. But yeah, so just to put a bow on football, I thought it was a really good year. Wins and losses wise, people will say it was a light schedule. I say then they did what they needed to do. Purdue ended up being a pretty good team. It was still an inexcusable loss at home, I think, in the way it happened, laying that egg. It was more of the same against Wisconsin. That was probably, I don't know, was that the low point? Was Michigan the low point? I don't know. But they got to Indianapolis. That's the goal right now. 10 wins. It was a good year. They put some trophies, and they put a meaningful trophy in the trophy case. And that's that. But we want more. We should want more. We expect more. This is Iowa. This isn't Illinois. This isn't Indiana. It's Iowa football. We should be expecting a lot more. And I think the bar has been raised, and Kirk and company have to figure out the quarterback position. And that's that for the future. And so let's get into basketball. It was such a weird game. I gotta say, it looked early on. Keegan Murray was going, and early on Iowa jumped out to. I think Murray had 14 and Maryland had 12 at one point. Man, early on I was sitting there going, okay, good. They're blowing out this team. Maryland's not great. They already fired Mark Turgeon, or he left. And Danny Manning is manning the ship. Terrible pun there. But I had been keeping my eye on Maryland because I knew this game was coming up because Iowa hadn't played a Big Ten game. It feels like forever. They lost at home to Northwestern. That was Manning's first game. But then they raided the ship. I saw them beat Florida by, I think, a deuce, and then a couple of blowouts against Cupcakes. And so Iowa was a 9-point favorite. It felt too high. It was too high. Hawkeyes end up winning by 5. What more is there to say about Keegan Murray? I don't know. Like, it's an amazing thing to me that he comes in 3-star, him and his brother, 3-star recruits, lately recruited, legacies obviously, but like no other offers, had none in high school, had to go to a special academy to get noticed. And he might be, I mean, and Luka Garza included. And I'm watching Luka, who is really playing well for my Pistons. And he's starting off really well in his career. And I think he'll be a nice part of the Pistons. But I mean, Keegan Murray is he a lottery pick? Like, is this just happening? It's incredible to me. I mean, it's incredible. He walks on the floor last year. That Iowa team had all that talent. And he walks on the floor and is just like instantly one of their best players and is a lottery pick. And he has the look of an NBA player. He's built like an NBA player. He has the skill set. He goes 5 of 6 from 3, 14 of 21 from the field, plays a game high 38 minutes yesterday, pours in 35 with 8 boards. It's incredible in terms of ball over once and committed 1 foul. I mean, there's just not much more you can say about him. And I think the shame in all this is we're only going to get 1 year of him. Or, well, 2 years, but 1 year of him being the star. Because if he keeps doing this, he's going to be the Big Ten Player of the Year. Sorry, Johnny Davis. Three, he can come out to he can take it to the rack. He can do he can run on the fast break. He can do every single thing, and he's a joy to watch. It's an absolute joy to watch. Now, I shudder at the thought of, I mean, in general, when you lose your best player, the team's going to struggle. That's true for any team in the world. The Milwaukee Bucks, they lose Giannis, obviously they're going to have to adjust and probably not be as good. Boy, Joe Toussaint played really well last night, and I thought Rebracha, he poured in 13, 8 boards. He can't make a free throw to save his life, but he played well too. But without Murray, I don't know. This team scares me. There's just moments where they go in these lulls and all of a sudden they're turning the ball over again. And, they had 7 turnovers and it felt like they had about 17 at one point. And they took it felt like that Illinois game when they came out and didn't play for the first 10 minutes. And they had one of those lulls again. And, against a better team in the Big Ten, I'm not sure they can dig out of that hole. Maryland's okay. I don't know how good they really are, but, I do worry, and I guess we're all just worried if arguably the best player in the conference gets hurt, but it just feels like last year, if Luka went down, I think Iowa could have picked up a lot of the slack. I don't know how much they can this year. So I think it's imperative to look, if he has to play 38 minutes, play 38 minutes, but he can't be wearing down late in the year because I don't know who else can really go off and stem the tide. And I just don't see it with this team right now with any of the other pieces. I mean, Patrick McCaffrey didn't really play well last night. Bohannon, 1 of 5. Tony Perkins had some moments, but he's 6 off the bench, but he was missing shots. I mean, they didn't shoot particularly well. And there was a lot of sloppiness. There was throughout the game. Exciting game, closer game. But I think the thing that was a little disconcerting was I think they're a lot with Keegan Murray. I think they're much better than this Maryland team. And maybe it was just getting that first one under their belts. Look, what did it mean? They had to win the game. Absolutely, 100% had to win the game for any chance of challenging for the top 5 in the Big Ten. You can't start 0-3 in this conference. You just can't do it. Because for every win at Minnesota, there's going to be a loss at Penn State. This conference just evens things out unless you're super elite. But ask Purdue, who was number 1 in the nation a couple weeks ago, they're 1-2 in the conference. Iowa's tied with them in the conference. So it's never easy, and you never take conference wins, Big Ten wins for granted. But the other pieces are going to have to be a lot better throughout conference play. You can't rely on Keegan Murray scoring 30 a game. He just can't against Big Ten competition. I can't expect him when Michigan State rolls in on my birthday to just drop 30, 30 and 8. And then, the Iowa, you just can't do it. There's going to be nights where he's not on. The Illinois game, he was off almost all game. Went off at the end, and nobody really, Tony Perkins had moments, but nobody can really step in, and I know this isn't last year's team, but you just look at last year and it was like, okay, Luka was always on. If he wasn't, it was Wieskamp time. If it wasn't Weezy, then it was Frederick. If it wasn't it was Jaba. They need somebody. They need somebody else consistently just to be there. Not even, they don't have to go off, but if to pick up the slack when Murray only scores 28 instead of 35, because they needed every bit of his 35 to win that game. But nonetheless, it was a conference win. It was their first conference win. They had to have it. Absolutely, 100% gets them back into some sort of chase. And so it was big. It wasn't pretty, but they never are. Just to look ahead at their schedule. So they go to Wisconsin Thursday, and I've said on this program before how much I hate Wisconsin more than really anything in the world. I hate the program, I hate the logo, I hate the school, I hate it all. But again, it feels like football where Wisconsin and Iowa came into the season. Wisconsin lost a lot, and they were sort of right around the same. I think Iowa was picked 9th in the Big Ten. Wisconsin may have even picked 10th in the Big Ten, the preseason poll we talked about. And Wisconsin just goes and wins the Maui Invitational and then goes to Purdue and wins. And it's just where is, I don't know what is this? How does this happen? Is Greg Gard that great? I guess. I don't know. I think it's one big personal joke on me and on Iowa fans because, I'm the biggest fan probably there is. I think he's done a great job, and this program is relevant every year. It seems in the Big Ten now, and going to the tournaments and winning games in the tournament. That's great. He needs to win 2 games in a tournament sooner rather than later. But I think overall he's done a really good job. But it's okay, now I'm looking again, is Wisconsin going to win another Big Ten title with a team that shouldn't be winning a bit? 2 years ago, they won a Big Ten title, and I saw that team in person, and Iowa just punked them and was a much better team, it looked like. And then all of a sudden, Wisconsin wins the Big Ten. It's just sickening. And it would be very just refreshing to see Iowa go in there and beat them Thursday. It'll be very tough. It's a house of horrors for almost every team, but it's not going to be easy. At Wisconsin, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. ESPN, I'll get to ESPN in a sec because they had something very interesting about Iowa hoops, but it's not a must win. I thought Maryland was a must win. I can't call road games in the Big Ten outside of a trip to Nebraska and maybe Penn State a must win. But I think if they could win this game, it would really, okay, maybe this team can finish in the top 5 of the Big Ten. Maybe they can finish in the top 4. I think most of all, put together a really good effort. I don't want to see them go there and a crater again and Fran get ejected or anything like that. you gotta put forth an effort. And look, this team, I think with Keegan Murray, they can beat probably anyone in the Big Ten if he's the best player in the Big Ten. But if he's off, who's going to step in that role? And so it was a nice win against Maryland. The competition just jumps right now, and you're at Wisconsin, and then a week later, you got Indiana at home. Indiana's not great. They had a bad loss at Penn State. Good job, Mike Woodson. They're 1-2 in the conference, but they'll be desperate. They always have talent. It's always a tight game with Iowa. Always. Iowa lost to them twice last year. They got swept by them, so that's by no means a gimme. And then you go to Maryland, or then you go to Minnesota after that, and then Rutgers. So it doesn't get easy. It's never easy in the Big Ten. We all know how this works. It's a struggle. Every game's a nightmare. Every game's tight. You're gonna have rare blowouts, but for the most part, they should all be just down the stretch. And especially this Iowa team, it feels like they can beat Michigan State and they can also lose to Penn State. It really feels like that right now. And I think they're pretty good. Like, I think this should be a tournament team. But they need to, like, what's their best win? I think it's Maryland right now. That's their best win. And the good news is they don't have a bad loss. Purdue, Illinois, and Iowa State are their losses. That's 3 teams probably in the top 20 right now. So they don't have a bad loss on their record, which is good. And the good news is they're in the Big Ten season where I don't know where a bad loss is. Okay, at Nebraska and home against Nebraska and probably home against Penn State. Other than that, you're probably looking at good losses the rest of the way. So a lot of opportunity as always in the Big Ten. But it's not easy. Not easy winning these games. But it was a big one against Maryland. I touched on it, ESPN. So their FPI projection has them favored against Wisconsin, which I thought was wild. Wisconsin coming off the win at Purdue, 51% to 48%. The FBP or whatever it is, the BPI, FPI, that's the football, the BPI. But Jay Billis had an article today on ESPN Plus where he ranked the top his 1 to was it 65 top teams in college basketball today. And I thought this was so fascinating because I was just looking and I'm like, Iowa State, whatever. Iowa checks in at number 24, ahead of the likes of, they're 24. Wisconsin's 30. This came out today. Wisconsin's 30. Michigan has been good this year, 32. Indiana, 35. Northwestern, 46. Minnesota, 47 after all that. And just what he said about Iowa. The story of the Hawkeyes begins and ends with Keegan Murray. After the team lost Luka Garza, Murray has blossomed. Murray's known as a great defender and rebounder, but now he leads the Big Ten in scoring and grabbing 8 rebounds a game, shooting 59 from the floor, 82% from the foul line. He's an NBA first rounder and the most improved player in the country. So it's all about Keegan Murray. And maybe this is just if you have Keegan Murray, you're going to have the best player in the court and you're going to have a chance against anyone. Maybe it's more of that. But, 24 right now, I don't know. It sounds awesome. 24 in the NCAA tournament equals out to, what would you be? If you're the 24th best team, then you would be 6th seed. Yeah. Like in the 6th seed area, and that would be a nice, if this team's a 6th seed, that's a successful season, regular season. You got to win 2 tournament games. And then you go over to Joe Lenardi's bracketology. Iowa's a 7th seed right now. And so maybe I'm way off and maybe I'm missing this. I guess I just don't know right now. This looks like a tournament team with Keegan Murray, but are they the 24th best team in America? I don't know. Maybe they go and beat Wisconsin on the road and then they're ranked and we're off and running. I mean, they don't have a bad loss. That's the good thing. And they really, the Iowa State game, they didn't look overmatched. They played like complete garbage. Now, Iowa State's been a better team, was a better team that night. But that wasn't them getting dominated. It was, I mean, they were horrible. And Iowa State did what they had to do. I mean, Iowa State beat them and wasn't very good that night. So they don't have a bad loss. And maybe that's what's holding other teams back. But I mean, the 24, it was just startling. And ahead of, I mean, I hate Wisconsin and I hope Iowa's better than them, but like Wisconsin just won at Purdue, won the Maui Invitational. And so it seems like Wisconsin's done a little more winning this year, but Billis has them at 24. If that's what they are this season, then I think it's a phenomenal job by Fran McCaffrey and a yeoman's effort by Keegan Murray, especially. And so are we, I guess my question is, are we missing the boat here? Like, are we really missing how good this team is? From Joe, how many teams of the lottery pick don't have some measure of success? I can think of Washington State and Simmons at LSU. That's a good question. It's funny. Like Klay Thompson played at Washington State. Who I don't even remember. Maybe they were good. I don't remember him in college. It was some weird area. The Ben Simmons. I mean, that's the ultimate disaster. The disaster number one. You have the number one pick. They ended up going to the NIT. He sat out the NIT. It was an ugly season. So that's a great point. And so I think seeing Iowa ranked in 7th in the bracketology and 24th and something like a Jay Billis index right now is a testament to Keegan Murray more than most. I mean, he's been unbelievable. Markelle Fultz. Okay. Yeah. That's he was at Washington, I think, University of Washington. That was another one. And that was weird too. And isn't it funny though, too, that both of them have sort of their NBA careers. I mean, Fultz has a reboot in Orlando, but their NBA careers have sort of paralleled that, especially Simmons. Simmons' NBA career looks just like it did at LSU. It's just startling to see that, but maybe I'm missing the boat. Maybe I shortchanged this team. I don't know. At 10 before the 2020-21 season, 10 overall, or is this football? I'm not sure if this is football or basketball. I mean, 10 in basketball is really bad. I guess, okay, say it's basketball. I mean, if you're losing before the 2021 season, so you're going to lose all those guys. I mean, it was definitely, look, the offseason felt like everyone was leaving and there wasn't a lot of hope. Okay, basketball. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, it felt like, I guess, okay, before last season, I guess you thought, okay, Frederick's probably still around. Jabo's gone. Garza's gone. Wieskamp is probably gone. Yeah, I mean, you just didn't. Keegan Murray was so that's why it's so crazy to me. Like, it's just so out of nowhere. And yeah, I agree with that last point by Guanca's down there. Fran has, and that's why I will defend him. As long, I mean, they're still winning, so I think it's and I get a lot of the fan base is frustrated and want to win more. And God knows, I thought last year ended up being a disappointment with all the talent. They didn't really win anything, but yes, definitely. And credit to Fran for finding Keegan Murray. And I get he's a legacy, but again, they had no offers, him and Chris. and I mean, he steps in and he's Fran found Aaron White too. And I mean, Murray steps in and he's a lottery pick. And you saw him last year and said, this dude's going to be a lottery pick. I mean, it was from game one on that team with all that talent. But that's a great question. I mean, just looking at the roster before you kind of knew what you had. Yeah, I mean, 10's low, but I mean, NIT at least, like, no chance of a tournament team if you're losing all that talent. So I think that's very fair. And look, I think the real challenge of this season, say Keegan is healthy and Iowa, is in that 6-7 region, or that range. Sorry. I think it's going to come down to just how much they can get out of the other guys. And, if you can get enough out of the other guys, difference between, finishing 6th in the Big Ten or 8th in the Big Ten. We all know, like, you can finish 9th in the Big Ten and still be a pretty good team, still be a tournament team. We've seen that a lot of years. So I think it's going to be the development of those guys. I got to say, there's a couple guys in this team I've not been impressed with, and I'm sort of waiting on. Patrick McCaffrey is one of them. I'm just kind of waiting on that jump. And he was the highest ranked recruit Fran's ever gotten, all that. Just waiting for that. I think Joe Toussaint's been really good this year in moments. He's had some offense, which we didn't see last year. How much were you really expecting out of Perkins and Ulis? They've been bright spots this year. There's a lot I like about Robracha's game. There's a lot I don't like, mostly his height. I thought he was taller. I don't know. He seemed bigger at North Dakota. Rebounding is going to cost this team probably several games. It'll probably be the end of them in the tournament at some point. They just cannot rebound the ball. I've never seen anything like it. And they don't have any size, but it's like they're not in position. It's just not, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. I've seen enough. We've seen 14 games of them not being able to rebound. And so they're just going to have to overcome those things. So this is an Iowa team. Look, at the beginning of the season, we said this. They're going to win a game at Wisconsin, not specifically, but they're going to win a game like that. And then they're going to turn around and lose at Northwestern or at Penn State. It's just going to be that up and down. And I think with Keegan Murray, you probably have the best player on the floor almost every night, but you also are probably, outgunned by a lot of the upper echelon teams in the Big Ten. That's the case. And so, yeah, it's going to take, look, it took Johnny Davis to score. I think he had 38 last night for Wisconsin, for them to win by 4 against Purdue. I think that's a lot of what Iowa's going to need out of Keegan Murray. You're going to need him to go off at Wisconsin. You're going to need him to go off against Michigan State. That's just what it's going to be. And look, players have done that. We've seen players do this. Kemba Walker, Shabazz Napier. You've seen in college basketball, players can take over and do that and win tournament games. You can do it. Like, is this team's not going to go win a national championship, but I don't think all hope is lost that they could maybe sneak into the second weekend with Keegan Murray healthy. And, but I do think, and a lot of times the development and the toughness comes as a Big Ten season wears on, but I think they just there has to be that extra punch for this team to really be anything more than, I don't know, maybe like a nice 10 seed with a really good player that they'll probably just lose in the first round. And I'm not saying that's a bad year, because they lost a ton of talent this offseason. I think a tournament appearance is really the goal this year. If they get to the NCAA tournament, I think it's a success. I think Fran will have done another really good job. Where is this program heading? That's another story, but we can get into recruiting and all that. It's going to be very interesting, so just a quick scheduling update, and it kind of coincides with the schedule or with the basketball team. So I'm actually going to Dubai in 3 days, and we'll be gone. There will be no show next week. Adam will be on tomorrow, and then he'll be on Wednesday. But in that time, they'll have played, I'll be around for the next time we talk. They'll have played Wisconsin. They'll have played Indiana at home, and then Minnesota. And then I'll be on a day later. Right before that, Rutgers. So if they go 2-1 in that stretch, oh my gosh, you're going to have a really nice road win either way. I think that's big. It feels like you got to beat Indiana at home, not like must win, but that's a team they should beat at home. How good is Minnesota? I don't know. Wisconsin, it'll be tough, but that'll be very fascinating. The next time I'm on in 2 weeks, what they look like, where those 3 games went, and how they played in them. The thing with Keegan Murray, the Keegan Murray caveat is bleak foreshadowing for next season, I think. Oh, with Keegan Murray caveat. Well, no, look, when you look at the roster, it's just like I think that's what scares me is And to be fair, I didn't know Keegan Murray would be this good. I guess until the beginning of last year. But I think just what scares me is it's like always with Iowa, and even last year losing all that talent, it was like, but Keegan's back. So if he takes a step, then, and I don't know right now, just right now, I mean, this is only January 4th. It could look a lot different come March. I don't know, like, say just Keegan Murray leaves and Jabo leaves and everyone else returns, like, where, yeah, like, guys can take steps, but, like, it's just sort of looking to next year, and I don't know. I don't see that definite guy. I don't see where this, who's the focal point of the offense, who can really take over again. I don't. And that's maybe there's someone. Maybe Patrick McCaffrey takes a huge leap. Maybe Joe Toussaint becomes, like, I don't know. I do think there's potential with the Perkinses and the Ulises off the bench and some of those guys. Like, I think I believe Rebracha has another year. So this isn't like Keegan's gone and they're garbage next year. It's and they're bringing in some a guy or two, I believe, but I just don't see it right now. And you're always kind of looking for that bridge. And it was, it's like, boy, if Luka comes back and you got Wieskamp back and then you got Frederick back, this team, and I can't project really anything for next year because outside of Murray, I do wonder what they have, but that'll be solved. They might not have anything. They might have a lot. Maybe, that sometimes when the star player leaves, it opens up a lot of other options for guys and opportunities for guys. So I don't want to make it sound bleak because I don't know what they're going to look like next year, obviously. Maybe Fran will bring in a transfer, even though he doesn't like to do that. So yeah, I'm never doubting Fran's recruiting again. Probably some 5-foot guy who missed a 3 since 2017. I mean, and I think he's deserved that. I mean, Luke, case in point, Luka Garza, 4-star recruit. Yes. Got him to come from Washington, D.C., and he's an NBA player. He's the National Player of the Year, 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year. Keegan Murray, I mean, Aaron White, there's several guys you can use to show that Fran knows what he's doing. Fran's not downfall, but I think the knock against Fran would always be he can't get that guy. Maybe he will. I think that's the big knock. I don't know if it's completely fair. It's tough to, grab Tyler Ulis and then who already go Kentucky, and then Kentucky comes in like, oh, he's supposed to go to Iowa. No, so you're battling a lot of forces there. So I think the recruiting has been, you look at, it's funny because you look at that class with the Murrays and you're like, I remember when they announced that class and everyone's like, oh God, like, what is this class? Like, it's just nothing there. And Keegan Murray is arguably the best player he's ever had. So you just never know. I mean, and I think that's fair. And I think it's fair to just trust Fran right now until look, not for nothing. The program is still, I mean, they're on track to make the tournament again, and when they get to the tournament, they've had success. He hasn't lost a first round game. They lost that first 4 game, but, so I don't think there's any reason to doubt Fran right now. Just as at a glance, if you take Keegan Murray off this team right now, which is not fair because there's a lot more season left and for guys to get, experience and get better for next year and an off season for them to get better. And so it's not going to look like what it would be if Keegan Murray got hurt right now. It's just, at a glance, it's just like, wow, like, I don't know who's the guy next year. I think that's mostly it. It's not that they're going to be bad. But look, this is why I'm a Fran fan. I will never, as of right now, I'm not really going to doubt his recruiting because he finds, much like Iowa football with the Desmond Kings of the world, they find talent and they turn 3 stars into lottery picks. They turn 4 stars into national players of the year. I mean, it's a great job he's doing. And I'll defend him until the program falls off. Well, we're coming across on 50 minutes here. Just a real recap. My name's Tom Clos. I write for Go Iowa Awesome right there. Hit the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on YouTube. On Twitter, we're at Iowa Sports Review right here. And or at Facebook, Iowa Sports Review. Twitter, IA Sports Review. You can catch me at Classy Hawkeye on Twitter. I write for Go Iowa Awesome. During football season, my stuff runs every Friday. Football's over. It'll be scattered throughout. I do the show every Tuesday, except next Tuesday I'll be in Asia. Adam Jacobi will be on tomorrow with more look ahead to Wisconsin. Probably wrap up the Citrus Bowl and wrap up Iowa's win over Maryland. But I think that's going to put a bow on it tonight. I wanted to hit a couple things with basketball. I think we did that. I think there's a lot more just to see from basketball, but it's hopeful. They're set up. They don't have a bad loss. It's like a blank slate. And there's a lot of opportunity in the Big Ten. And I think with Keegan Murray, this team can really beat anyone on their schedule. And that's a very exciting thing. And this should be a very fun team to watch. And maybe that goes back to the question about next year. That's sort of exciting too. Like it was great having Luka, obviously, but like we knew what they would be with Luka as the focal point. You kind of knew that. And it wasn't the most suited for winning in the NCAA tournament. It's very guard oriented. Maybe one of these point guards explodes. Maybe a freshman point guard they bring in explodes. There is opportunity there. That might be very appealing to a transfer for Fran. So I think there's a lot of excitement there, and I trust Fran. And so there's a lot to look forward to this season. And this team is, if nothing else, at the very least, and even Fran's bad teams, they've mostly been fun to watch because they score a lot and they run up and down the court, and it should be My name's Tom Clos. Thanks for following along. Thanks for the chat. I will see you in 2 weeks. Adam Jacobi will be on tomorrow. Don't miss it. 8. I'm sorry, my time zone's 8 Eastern, 7 Central, right here, Iowa Sports Review. Until next time, stay safe, everyone. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.